Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Beyond World this morning. My name is Diksha Bisla. Let's start with the headlines. South Africa says a diplomat from the US Embassy has been assigned to take part in the handover of the G20 presidency. Adds that it can take place any time from Monday. Reuters report claims that the United States is poised to launch a new phase of Venezuela-related operation in the coming days, and this as the Trump administration escalates pressure on President Nicolas Maduro's government.
We're trying to get it ended. One way or the other, we have to get it ended.
US President Donald Trump says the current plan to end the Russia-Ukraine war is not his final offer to Kiev, as European allies voice concerns over the proposals. Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, admits that he tried to damage his ankle monitor out of curiosity. And this is a day after being taken into custody amid concerns that he was plotting to escape house arrest. Japanese officials blast China's claim that Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi shifted Japan's Taiwan stance, calls it baseless, urges dialogue to prevent ties from spiraling. Gunmen kidnap over 300 students and teachers in one of Nigeria's largest school abductions. Niger State closes all schools in the premises. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres praises COP30 efforts but acknowledges that many may feel disappointed with the results, a climate deal without a fossil fuel plan. Japan says the massive stimulus package will have an overall economic impact on $265 billion. However, investors are worried that Japan may be spending beyond its means. The Japanese yen fell to its weakest level against the dollar since January 2025, despite intervention comments from officials.
Well, tonight we're getting our first look at new video from a massive weekend raid near San Pedro and Bassi. It shows people hiding inside food trucks and customers who were eating at picnic tables taken into custody.
Federal officials say more than 150 people were arrested, including 27 alleged Tren de Aragua gang members. Tonight, Arlisa Nieves breaks down the new video and the impact on businesses. Alicia?
Well, these business owners say they were blindsided by the chaos. They tell me they were caught in the middle of something they had nothing to do with. We're also learning the raid may have been in motion long before Sunday. Employees report seeing drones overhead in the days leading up to it.
This is video from Friday night outside Las Pollitas Snack y Tacos food truck, parked off San Pedro and Bassi. Families enjoying late-night elotes, agua frescas, and tacos. 48 hours later, chaos as federal agents rushed an event space right behind them. Witnesses say it was a 15-year-old's birthday party. When federal agents arrived, people started to run. You can see a group hiding inside a food truck.
Algo de temor.
Genesis Valdez, the owner of Las Pollitas, said it was a scary sight. She was closed at the time, but watched everything unfold through her security camera.
Como dueños de otra traila.
She said the owners of the only food truck that was open were detained, along with their customers who were outside eating. She watched as agents broke the handle of her food truck.
Metieron un perrito que checara la traila.
They brought in a dog to check the trailer, she said. One agent is later seen using a table umbrella to break her surveillance camera. But the impact didn't stop there. Now, she says customers may fear coming back.
La gente no relacionó mucho
She
con
said now they're being associated with the raid because their food truck was unfortunately right in front. That's why she shared her security video on social media.
Quisimos mostrarlo.
She said, "We wanted people to see we are totally unaffiliated with what happened. We were closed. The people were in the building behind us, not our trailer." All three food trucks moved out. Genesis lost days of business, but she's found a new home at 7-Eleven Hildebrand and hopes to reopen tomorrow.
Y no está bien la ubicación. Aquí nos pensamos quedar.
Investigators say they seized cocaine, guns, and about $35,000 cash in the raid. DHS calls it a gang crackdown. But two of our area's congressmen are demanding answers, saying the government still hasn't explained the raid or where the more than 100 people were taken. Alicia Nieves,
The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development is introducing changes in how communities fight homelessness. The agency just released new rules for 2025, and providers across the country say these changes could completely rewrite how people get help. The Continuum of Care program is the main federal funding stream communities use to respond to homelessness. It runs on about $3.5 billion a year and supports hundreds of thousands of people nationwide. This year, it's closer to $4 billion. That includes older adults, people with disabilities, veterans, and families who need stable housing for safety reasons. So why does all of this matter? These rules could change how communities respond to homelessness in a very short time. For years, communities could count on most of their funding being safe. About 90% was locked in. Now, only 30% is guaranteed. That means 70% of the money communities use to keep people housed is suddenly up for competition. If a community loses points in scoring, they could lose critical programs. HUD says communities can only spend 30% of their funding on permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. The Urban Institute says permanent supportive housing is the most effective way to help people leave homelessness and stay stable long term. Studies show permanent housing reduces time spent unhoused, improves housing stability, cuts arrest and jail stays, reduces emergency room visits, and improves overall quality of life. It even helps lower a community's rate of chronic homelessness. In comparison, the Urban Institute says transitional housing does not show the same results. People get into housing at a slower rate, are less likely to remain housed, and still rely on public assistance. There is no evidence that transitional housing reduces homelessness or successfully houses people facing long-term or repeated homelessness. HUD's own documents show how big the drop is. Nearly 87% of next year's funding was set to support permanent housing, but under these new rules, it is capped at just 30%. A HUD briefing says about 170,000 people could be at risk of losing housing because of these cuts. Another big shift is that almost every program has to compete. Youth housing projects and domestic violence programs that once had extra protections no longer do. They have to be ranked and scored like everyone else. HUD also created new reasons a project can be rejected. Programs can be denied money for using racial preferences, for using any definition of sex that is not binary, or for engaging in harm reduction. When HUD talks about harm reduction, they mean basic safety steps like providing safer use supplies to prevent disease or giving people Narcan to reverse an overdose. These are common tools used in many shelters and outreach programs to keep people alive and safe. The National Low Income Housing Coalition says the new scoring rules push communities toward models focusing on camping bans, mandated services, and strict public safety measures rather than on housing that actually works. The National Low Income Housing Coalition says the late release could create serious funding gaps. Applications are due January 14th, but awards do not arrive until May. About 1/3 of all grants expire before then, which means many programs could run out of money even if they are renewed. That could lead to service cuts, temporary shutdowns, and more people losing housing as funding lapses. HUD is also shifting priorities. Projects requiring services, offering treatment on site, or partnering with law enforcement get more points. Communities also get points for having laws against camping or illegal drug use and for enforcing them. This gives more weight to public safety approaches and could affect how outreach work is done. New rules change what programs even look like. Transitional housing must offer 40 hours of services a week. Rapid rehousing must require services and show job gains. New supportive housing must focus on older adults or people with physical disabilities and also require participation in services. The scoring system is different too. A new merit review decides who gets funded, and in Tier 2, projects can earn extra points for requiring services. That means voluntary support models that have been standard for years may start with fewer points. HUD also expanded its risk review. Now it can deny funding based on media reports, findings from the Inspector General, or public complaints.
Only a fraction of the air traffic workforce will get the $10,000 perfect attendance bonuses promised after the 43-day government shutdown. And this morning, thousands are getting left out. The FAA says just 776 controllers and technicians qualified, far fewer than expected. About 20,000 others won't get the bonus because they missed shifts during the shutdown, often to take side jobs or care for children, while paychecks were frozen. The controller shortage during the shutdown forced cuts at 40 airports, fueling days of cancellations. The Controllers Union is blasting the bonus decision, saying thousands who consistently reported for duty while working without pay are being left out of the reward they were promised.
At least 315 people have been abducted in one of Nigeria's worst mass kidnapping incidents. And this includes 303 students and 12 teachers. They were taken from a Christian school in Nigeria's northwestern Niger state. The St. Mary's Catholic School was attacked in the dead of night. In the early hours of Friday, the Christian Association of Nigeria announced today that 315 were kidnapped from the school. The local governor has announced that all schools in Niger state have been shut indefinitely following the mass abduction. St. Mary's was the second Nigerian school where a mass kidnapping took place this week.
These incidents will have been avoided. However, it's not a time for blame game. Our mission today is to see how we can rescue these children and all those that have been kidnapped in that incident. As such, we are calling on all the security agencies, civil society organizations, organized labor, clerics, to please focus on the rescue of these children.
Well, on Monday, a school was attacked in the neighboring Kebbi state. At least 25 schoolgirls and a teacher were abducted, and at least 2 staff members were killed. 2 of the girls managed to escape, but 23 are still missing, and these are not the only kidnappings that made headlines this week. On Tuesday, gunmen stormed a church service in the Kwara state. At least 2 people were killed and 38 kidnapped. The attack was captured on video because the service was being live streamed at the time. A church official later said that the gunmen They have asked for 100 million naira ransom per kidnapped worshipper. Now, that's about $69,000 per person. And that makes it 3 major attacks in just 5 days. 2 of them targeted schools, one of them a Catholic school. A church also raided with dozens of worshippers kidnapped, and all the attacks took place in the same region of Nigeria. Abuja has been under tremendous pressure over the attacks, and this is because US President Donald Trump has taken a special interest in Nigeria. He believes that Christians in Nigeria are being targeted. On October 31st, he designated Nigeria a country of particular concern for alleged religious freedom violations. Now, the following day, he put out a post on social media threatening to send the US military guns a-blazing into the country. A day after that, he made the following statement.
Could be. I mean, a lot of things I envisage, a lot of things. They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that part of the world very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
The Nigerian government has been scrambling in the wake of the recent kidnappings. Nigeria's Chief of Army Staff personally went to Kebbi State on Tuesday. He issued directions to troops overseeing the rescue of the 23 schoolgirls who are still in captivity over there. Meanwhile, Nigeria's National Security Advisor has been on a diplomatic mission in the US throughout this week. He reportedly met US War Secretary Pete Hegseth and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane on Thursday. After meeting Nigeria's National Security Advisor, Hegseth said that the US Department of War was actively working with Nigeria to end the persecution of Christians by terrorists. The US State Department also made the following announcement. Nigeria has been ravaged by insurgencies for decades. Groups like Boko Haram and the Islamic State, West Africa province have been behind a string of attacks. But this week's kidnappings have been attributed to armed raiders looking for a ransom. In Nigeria, they're colloquially known as bandits. Now, will Trump's focus on Nigeria actually help solve the country's insurgency problem? We'll have to wait and watch.
And finally, just when you thought you'd seen every party trend the world could invent, India has arrived with a twist. Weddings, but without the actual wedding. No bride, no groom, no vows, no family feuds over dessert, just the spectacle, the sparkle, and the full Bollywood-level drama minus the commitment. Across the country, young Indians are now buying tickets to what can only be described as the world's most elaborate themed night out, the fake wedding. Think of it as a music festival dressed like a marriage ceremony. It's loud, it's colorful, it's chaotic, and it's quickly becoming the hottest new way to party in India's biggest cities.
By now, the phrase big fat Indian wedding summons a cinematic montage in everyone's mind. Shimmering lehengas, blinding lights, aunties comparing diamonds, uncles comparing cholesterol, Bollywood beats shaking the floor, and an open bar that mysteriously empties before the actual ceremony begins. It's grand, it's emotional, it's chaotic, and it's deeply, undeniably Indian. Now imagine all of that without the bride and groom. No rituals, no priest chanting mantras, no family drama erupting over the dessert counter, just the party, stripped of solemnity but loaded with sparkle. Welcome to India's newest Gen Z approved Instagram certified nightlife trend, the fake wedding. Across Delhi, Mumbai and Bengaluru, young Indians are buying tickets. Yes, tickets to wedding-themed parties that promise all the fun of a real wedding, minus, well, the wedding. With ticket prices ranging from a minimum of $15 to $1,500, India's hospitality sector is smelling opportunity and rose petals. Hotels, clubs and event companies are cashing in on the craze. An events company that hosted a fake wedding party in Bengaluru stated that the trend actually began with young Indians abroad. They would gather, dance to Bollywood music, dress in ethnic wear, and that's where the idea came from. You can twirl in sequined saris, sip tequila-loaded water balls, dance to live music, and then go home. It's the wedding of your dreams, without the emotional baggage, financial guilt, or distant relatives judging your outfit choices. The formula is simple. Remove the stress, keep the sparkle. Gen Z is embracing fake wedding because they deliver everything they want. Community, creativity, spectacle without tradition breathing down their necks. No rituals, no responsibilities, just pure curated joy. Fake weddings are also inclusive spaces. You show up with friends, dance your heart out, pose for reels, eat like it's your cousin's buffet, and leave without worrying about gift envelopes. It's the wedding you'd actually want to attend once a month. On one hand, it's easy to dismiss fake weddings as yet another Gen Z aesthetic, like coastal grandmother, cottagecore, or that era where everyone dressed like a Y2K pop star. But with booming ticket sales and growing interest from nightlife hubs, the trend is rapidly evolving into a full-blown business model. And why not? India already treats weddings like a festive season. Turning them into monthly party nights feels like a natural, almost inevitable cultural pivot. Celebration without complications. After all, if there's one thing Indians love more than a wedding, it's attending one where they don't have to bring a gift.
When the so-called 12-day war between Israel and Iran ended in June, neither side really saw it as an end to the fighting, more like a pause. Now, Iran says its goal is to build enough missiles to launch 2,000 all at once. The last time Israel and Iran came to blows, the Israeli Air Force took out 2 uranium enrichment centers, about half of Iran's arsenal of 3,000 missiles, and close to 80% of its launchers. After the fighting stopped on June 24th, both Israel and Iran essentially started rearming and planning for the next engagement. In October, the New York Times reported Iran was shifting toward mass strike readiness and putting its missile factories into 24-hour operation. Iran will definitely need some help to make that happen from either Russia, China, or North Korea. But ultimately, Tehran's goal is to build enough strike capability to overwhelm Israeli air defenses. During the 12-day war, Iran launched 500 missiles and more than 1,000 drones at Israel. With the help of the U.S., most were destroyed, but a few dozen got through. 31 Israelis were killed, another 3,000 injured. There was also extensive damage to homes and buildings, including on 2 university campuses and a hospital. So, while Israel definitely came out ahead in June, experts say it would be unwise to discount Iran's current threats.
I would take it very seriously. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that currently the Iranian has that capacity. I don't think that at this moment they have this capacity for now, but we definitely should be taking it very serious.
That's Avi Melamed, a former intelligence officer in the IDF and founder of Inside the Middle East. I caught up with him while he was literally on the road during a speaking tour. He says Iran, and specifically its leadership, the Mullah regime, is in a vulnerable position. For decades, the regime relied on its proxy forces around the Middle East, called the Axis of Resistance, to project power and act somewhat as a deterrent. But after a couple of years fighting with the IDF, those proxy forces are mostly dead or severely degraded. Iran's only real play now? Building up the only other means of power projection it has, its missile program. But here's the rub. While most of the missiles and launchers Iran has are made and stored in underground facilities, the country doesn't have the ability to launch those missiles from underground. They have to be taken above ground, where they need to be prepped for launch. That takes time, making them vulnerable to attack. In June, when Israel was carrying out attacks from within Iranian airspace with impunity, it was because the Israeli Air Force had already decimated Iran's air defenses in previous attacks. which is why Avi Melamed says Iran may want to build more missiles that can hit Israel, but without the ability to protect them before launch, missiles are meaningless.
To the best of our knowledge and understanding, the Iranians are putting priority in rebuilding their aerial defense capacities. And here they have some challenge because, again, they are dependent upon importing those systems. Major potential suppliers of such advanced systems are either China or Russia or North Korea. China is reluctant to provide Iran with those capacities because of the UN sanctions. Russia is also not rushing to provide the Iranians with its most advanced anti-aerial capacities. And so in that regard, the Iranians are facing some significant challenge because they do realize that in any case they must restore first those capacities.
When the fighting stopped in June, Israel said it was willing to strike again if Iran tried to restart its nuclear enrichment program. That program suffered some major setbacks when the U.S. used B-2 stealth bombers to hit a couple of underground facilities. But Iran says it is still committed to developing a domestic nuclear program, regardless of what the U.S. or Israel says. So, while it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that Israel and Iran will start another war, it's extremely possible, maybe even likely.
China is pushing the boundaries of ocean technology and raising serious questions about the future balance of power at sea. Beijing is now building what it calls a floating, all-weather, deep-sea research facility. But what experts are calling a mobile, artificial island engineered to withstand even a nuclear blast. This giant semi-submersible platform, weighing 78,000 tons, is the first of its kind in the world. It carries the same displacement as China's newest Fujian aircraft carrier and can house over 230 personnel for 4 months without any resupply. Once deployed in 2028, it will be able to move through open seas at a cruising speed of 15 knots while functioning like a permanent science base. Chinese scientists from Shanghai Jiao Tong University saying the superstructure holds critical systems, power, communication, navigation modules that must remain operational in any circumstance. And for that, they say nuclear protection is absolutely vital. The floating island is designed to endure rough seas, Category 17 super typhoons, and extended missions in deep ocean zones. Its intended operating areas including the South China Sea, one of the world's most heavily disputed maritime regions.
India, Australia and Canada have come together to launch a significant new partnership in technology and innovation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced this trilateral Australia-Canada-India technology and innovation partnership at the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg. Well, the three leaders met on the sidelines of the summit and agreed that this partnership would deepen collaboration among democratic countries spanning 3 continents and 3 oceans. This new initiative aims to push forward cooperation of critical and emerging technologies that can drive growth and development. The 3 nations also plan to strengthen supply chains by diversifying sources and encouraging resilience, with a particular emphasis on green energy innovation. Clean energy and the transition to net zero emissions are the other key priorities. Another major focus area is the widespread adoption of artificial intelligence. The countries also agreed that officials will convene in early 2026 to map out practical steps for advancing this trilateral partnership. Now, on the summit sidelines, Prime Minister Modi held meetings with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. PM Modi described his conversations with Guterres as very productive. In the G20 opening session, Prime Minister Modi called for a profound rethink of global development frameworks. He proposed new G20 initiatives that include creating a task force to counter the drug terror nexus and a global healthcare response team to better manage health emergencies worldwide.
Resilience cannot build in silos. G20 को ऐसी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजी को बढ़ावा देना चाहिए जो न्यूट्रिशन, पब्लिक हेल्थ, सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर और डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस को जोड़कर एक मजबूत वैश्विक सुरक्षा बनाए.
And for more on this, our Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibal, has sent us this report. Take a look.
G20 summit is underway in Johannesburg, and a big win for India in terms of the Johannesburg declaration, which echoed similar lines when it comes to the G20 summit here in Delhi in 2023. Whether it is the mention of the LIFE mission, the campaign by the Indian Prime Minister on sustainable lifestyle, whether it's the CDRI, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, whether it's call for UNSC reforms, climate change, and of course the issue of terrorism. Now, this is the first ever summit to take place on the African soil, and the Indian Prime Minister reiterated India's support to Africa and also announced several initiatives, whether it's health, whether it is dealing with drugs, that of course funds terrorism, whether it's traditional medicines, or whether it is the focus largely as to how India can help train Africa and many Africans, the youth population. So a significant summit, and the developments, of course, will carry on Sunday as well as the summit concludes. So that's Sybil for WION in New Delhi.
Thank you very much. We've just had a great meeting, a really good, very productive meeting. We have one thing in common. We want this city of ours that we love to do very well. And I wanted to congratulate the mayor. He really ran an incredible race against, a lot of smart people, starting with the early primaries against some very tough people, very smart people.
I've spoken about...
That's okay, you can just say yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Yes.
It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
Appreciated the meeting with the president, and as he said, it was a productive meeting focused on a place of shared admiration and love, which is New York City, and the need to deliver affordability to New Yorkers, the 8.5 million people who call our city their home, who are struggling to afford life in the most expensive city in the United States of America. We spoke about rent, we spoke about groceries, we spoke about utilities, we spoke about the different ways in which people are being pushed out. We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and most recently.
What we did is we discussed crime. More than ICE per se, we discussed crime. And he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And we actually, people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
I've spoken about the Israeli government committing genocide, and I've spoken about our government funding it. And I shared with the president in our meeting about the concern that many New Yorkers have of wanting their tax dollars to go towards the benefit of New Yorkers and their ability to afford basic dignity.
I want to ask the mayor-elect about a House resolution just passed overwhelmingly to condemn socialism, including with 86 Democrats, all of House Dem leadership, and the Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, despite his endorsement of you. What's your reaction to that?
I have to be honest with you, I focused very little on resolutions. Frankly, I've been focusing...
Condemn socialism.
I understand. I think the focus is on the work at hand. I can tell you I am someone who is a democratic socialist. I've been very open about that. And I know there might be differences about ideology, but the place of agreement is the work that needs to be done to make New York City affordable. That's what I look forward to.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
And Mr. President, I wanted to ask you also...
Mr. President, to send federal troops to New York City. You both have differences when it comes to ICE agents in New York City. Mr. Mamdani, you called ICE a rogue government entity. I wonder how you reconcile your differences on both of those issues.
Well, I think we're going to work them out. And I think that if we have known murderers and known drug dealers and some very bad people, you know, we want to get them out. And the mayor wants to have peace. We discussed this at great length, actually, maybe more than anything else. He wants to have a safe New York. Ultimately, a safe New York is going to be a great New York. If it's not safe, no matter how well we do with pricing and with anything else, we can talk about anything you want. If you don't have safe streets, it's not going to be a success.
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.